Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to Cave of the Cross Apologetics. I am Patrick.
And I'm Tony.
And we're continuing on our kind of later half of our book of Against All Oppositions by Greg Bahnsen. And, we're talking about defending the Christian worldview is the subtitle of this. And so what we've done so far is we've defined the what a worldview is, what a Christian worldview is. We've done this in other books as well. And what Bahnsen does here in this chapter 8, is he's taking a look at specifically one type of worldview, and especially from his vantage point, is he's looking at how to critique kind of the atheistic worldview. So,
and actually, he calls this one the materialistic atheist.
Right.
So the atheist that says that only physical objects exist, kind of.
Right. And so, atheism can be a broad term depending on, your identification if Hinduism or if Buddhism is technically atheistic in nature. And so that would be kind of looking back at our previous couple episodes that we did of breaking down a look at the worldview based on how different religions or worldview outlooks look at all of reality. And so here, as Tony was saying, that we're looking at this from a purely materialistic point of view, that all that is in the world is material things. And so the question is then, can one operate within that worldview system? So we're going to look at kind of two different aspects. Is it knowable? And then also, is it livable? And so here's where Bahnsen is kind of more well known. If you've interacted with presuppositionalists online or kind of authors that have stemmed from Bahnsen, these kind of three areas are what Bahnsen is known for, and it's what a lot of presuppositionalists really focus their argumentation on when confronting atheists. So that's what we're going to be doing of chapter 8, and we're probably going to split this into two different episodes because it is dealing with only all of reality. And so we're wanting to define our terms, and then obviously we're offering a critique. And again, what the critique from a presuppositional point of view is, there's always a kind of a two-step approach. Is one, it says, all right, let's grant you the fact that you are correct. Are you consistent in living within that worldview? And then hopefully the answer is no, because the Christian will want to believe that their worldview is the ultimate and doesn't not account for all material and immaterial things in the world, and then provide then the real answer. And that one would be the external critique. And so that's what presuppositionalist does. It offers kind of this kind of common ground area where you essentially say, okay, you want to live that way? Fine. What do we get as a result of that? You say this is the case for science or physics or chemistry. Is that? And you say this is all there is. All that we can see is all that we know. Okay, can we operate that way? And do you honestly believe that, or are you inconsistent with what you claim to be saying? And so Bahnsen starts out this chapter 8 with, in previous chapter, we surveyed the various kinds of worldviews that are available. He said, I told you that when you do an internal critique of these worldviews, you're going to be looking at the arbitrariness and inconsistencies. So now let's move on to an internal critique of material atheism. As we examine the problems that the atheist has in his worldview, you will see that from a philosophical standpoint, atheism has no credibility whatsoever. Big claims.
Right. Yeah. And so he says some people want to know, how can we defend the Bible as the word of God or Christianity as a worldview? He tells us. That's the question. And he says that our apologetic is, and this is it, that unless Christianity is true, you can't prove anything at all. That's what he tells us. In other words, you can put it, he says, in a more sophisticated way, The Christian worldview is the transcendental precondition of intelligibility. How about that? For a mouthful, right?
There's your philosophy words right there.
That's right. Transcendental precondition of intelligibility. So he kind of breaks this down for us. He says it is the precondition, right? What must be the case and what must be assumed to be the case for anything in human experience to be intelligible, right? So that's what he means by this idea of transcendental precondition of intelligibility. What must be the case or what must be assumed for anything in human experience to be intelligible, for us to understand anything?
Right. And we did talk about tag, as it's lovingly known, with Dr. Anderson when we covered his book, Why Should I Believe Christianity? And so you can find those at cavetothecross.com. And in the middle of the page, you can click on the book, see all the different chapters that we did. We talked about tag, and especially when he came on for the interview, that's kind of at least what we wanted to hone in on a lot, because he's well articulate in the transcendental argument, and he does just a superb job in his writing on how important tag is, and it's something that I don't think people tend to think about. You know, we talked about with materialism. It seems to be the easy one to go to, because you're always interacting with the material. But when you kind of think about, okay, well, you know, what is the universe and what is it is expanding into, and what are all the necessary cases for why the universe is the way that it is? That's when you get into the, oh, my brain is hurting type ideas, and their tag is the kind of formulated on, and so he does just a really good job of kind of presenting the case for why Christianity is the best explanation in a transcendental argumentation. But the atheistic materialist says, well, Christianity is not true. There is no God. There's no soul. There's no afterlife. There's just this life. There is just matter. And even if those things exist, which I don't think that they do, then we can never interact with them. We can't know them. And so you can just throw all of that out. There's just all that there is just this. There's no spiritual reality. There is just the physical cosmos, and that's the hand that we're dealt, and we're just going to have to operate within that structure. And to build all these things like angels and demons, that does way too much work. You're overcomplicating the entire situation. You're just need to deal with the facts on the ground, which are the physical realities of all things, and that's it.
Right. So there's no need for, all of this extra stuff. It's kind of like an argument from simplicity, or what they call parsimony, right? That if we can explain everything with the physical reality, then there's no need to add anything to our explanation or to reality at all.
Right.
So this is it's a simplistic approach, is what they would argue, right? Let's just deal with, why add anything else if we can explain everything with the physical reality. Right.
Yep. So they would go on to say that if this were the case, you couldn't know that this is the case, and you couldn't prove anything at all. And so,
and that's Bahnsen's claim, right?
Right.
Yeah.
If materialism is all that there is, and that's it, well, then having this conversation right here, reading this book, thinking about things, applying one idea for another, and figuring out that where things meet up or touch intellectually, we need to stop doing that, because that's not what the world is able to give us. We're just adding our meat sacks are adding to the complication of this life, because we want to survive better, and the way to do that is not to be afraid of death, or to think that this is all there is, and we need to feel more special. I don't know how that would lead us to better survivability, but it seems to be the case for me, because that's all I am, and this is important to me. So either I'm the product of evolution that needs to pass away, or I will pass along those genes that will lead to a better offspring and better survivability. So definitely we're talking from an atheistic point of view here. And so survivability is kind of key of what are the necessary outcomes are to go on to survive.
Right. Yeah. And so what Bahnsen does now, after, he's kind of laid out his perspective on materialistic atheism. Now what he does is he goes into a series of about 3 or 4 issues that he believes the materialistic atheists, even though we have to deal with every day and they're kind of common sense type of things, he believes that the material atheist's worldview cannot handle, right? And he begins with the problem of induction. Now, this is kind of a famous problem in the philosophy of science, and he asks us to consider the problem of induction. The problem of induction, he says, might also be called the problem of causality or the uniformity of nature, right? These are some other ways to express this particular problem. He says all science, biology, physics, psychology, even mathematics or whatever, rests upon inductive inferences, right? So inductive inferences take something that we've experienced in the past and projects it into the future, right? That's the basic idea of induction. So we can do an inductive generalization, for instance, where we say, this has happened in the past at this time, and the same thing has happened in the past at this time, and therefore it happened in the past at this time. And so probably it'll happen in the future next time. So that's kind of, we're making this inductive generalization based on what's happened in the past. There are various kinds of induction, but that's a common one, right? The sun rose the day before yesterday, it rose yesterday, it rose this morning, therefore probably it'll rise tomorrow. That's an inductive inference. And that's the kind of thing he's talking about. We live that out every day. Nobody checked. Most of us who are sitting down didn't check our seats to see if they would hold us, right? Because the last time they held us, and so we just assumed that probably it'll hold us this time, right? Are we guaranteed that? No, and that's what Bahnsen is going to point out here. There is a serious problem with regard to induction, especially if you're a materialistic atheist.
Right. And this isn't, a promise for a problem for a high level science. This isn't something that, once you get into the doing math for the sake of math, not the good math that helps you balance your checkbook. I mean, these are the concepts that we teach at the very basic level to elementary school kids learning science. We teach them, okay, here's the 5 points of science. You have your observations, you have your hypothesis, you have your testing. Well, all those things are predicated on the fact that induction is kind of a necessary thing, because why do experiments? Why do experiments as a group? Why do experiments now and then in the future? Why are you publishing your notes? And all these things are taught at a very basic level to school children to get them to understand the very foundation and basis of science. And so here we're not talking about some big heady claim of, well, induction, that's a new and big word. No, this is just the ability to do science is rested upon, can we do it again? Or do we know that it can be done again? If we're doing a scratch test to see if the gold bar is real, well, we definitely can't rely on it happening again, and so we're going to have to do all our tests over again, and we can't do it for that one piece of gold and another piece of gold and say, oh, these two things are similar. We have to come up with a whole new system because of this problem of induction, and so that's what is being talked about here. And he says, what we learn about the past must be projectable into the future. All science rests upon the uniformity of nature. If there is no uniformity in the natural world, then all your scientific experiments would be a waste of time. Doing calculations to get the tiny rocket that you're wanting to make at 2/100ths of a scale, and then blow that up to put a person inside of it, you couldn't go from one to the other if this uniformity isn't the case. You could learn everything you wanted about chemical interactions on Tuesday, but on Wednesday, that information would be useless. You cannot know that is still the case. The world is ever changing. It's constantly in flux. What's there to hold it together? We don't know if two hydrogen molecules coming together with an oxygen will create water. We're just really hopefully that it does, or in 4 days.
Well, it did last time, right?
Yeah.
It did last time. And so, we're kind of assuming that or hoping that it'll do it next time, right?
Right. And, in 4 days, we're all going to be scratching our throats. So hopefully it's the case. Oh, but we can't hope on things. Hope is the wrong way to think about things.
That's right. Hope is a religious word.
Right. So in a broad sense, induction is the view that the future will be like the past, that the future relationships between events will resemble past relationship events. And so when we're talking about induction, it might be kind of a new word to you, but all we're saying is what happened in the past is what will happen in the future on things that we commonly know and understand to be the case. And experimentation does flesh that out. But can we then rely on experimentations to do that and say that this will always be the case? Can we make those rules and generalizations?
Right. And that's what he wants to push with regard to the materialistic atheist, right? He says, pretend now for argument's sake that you're an atheistic material and I'm a Christian. And I say, the reason I'm going to the science lab today is to continue my investigations, so that I can, because I know that there's a sovereign personal God who made the universe and governs it and controls it and has made it regular so that I can learn about things. The information I've learned in the past can be projected into the future because that's the way God has created the world, right? As a Christian, I have no problem with that. He says to the atheist, but what I want you to know and what I'm asking you is, why are you going to the lab today, right? What gives you the confidence that the future will be like the past? How do you know that's the case, right? And so that's the challenge. That's the problem of induction. So the Christian he's suggesting here has an answer. Why does induction work? Why do we believe the future will be like the past? Well, because that's the way God has created his universe, and he governs his universe. And as a creator, he can be trusted, right? What about the atheist? How do you know that, tomorrow will be like yesterday, right? And obviously things change all the time, right? So what might happen, when I picked up the pencil this time and I dropped it, I cannot guarantee that won't do the same thing. I can assume it, I can hope it, I can say, well, it did it last time, but that's no guarantee of what's going to happen next time. That's the problem of induction, right? That we have to assume that the future will be like the past. And for the materialistic atheist, there's no ground for that assumption. Right? There's no way that they can have that assumption other than just what he's going to show here is by a circular argument. Right. And that's what he's going to talk about. Right.
And we have to remember too that the easy answer is just to say, well, it works. That's it. I don't need to care about the why, but it just works. But we're talking about what are the underlying assumptions of why things are the way that they are. And the presuppositionalist is always asking the question, why is this the case? And so the atheist response of, well, we know it works. We have proof that it works. If it didn't, then all of a sudden all of our things would be topsy-turvy and we would be doing something else. But the Christian could just make that same type of argument and say, well, it just works because we believe in God, or God exists in the universe, and it works. And if he didn't exist, then it would be topsy-turvy. And there's no distinguish between those two interactions with what is reality. And so we're saying, well, why is this the case? And can you account for why that is the case? So it just works. Well, why does it work? Why is that?
Right. It works is not an explanation. Right. That's not an explanation. It works. Okay, fine. the explanation would be, why does it work, right? And he's suggesting that the materialistic atheist doesn't have a why for induction. Now, notice we're calling this the problem of induction because it is a problem. It's a problem for the materialistic atheist because we have to, just basically state it. How do you know that the future will be like the past? You don't, right? That's the problem of induction, right? Now, we assume it will, and we act like it will, and we say, well, it works, but there's no good justification for that, right? And this was pointed out actually in the history of philosophy. David Hume, who wrote in the 1700s, was one of the first ones to help us to really understand this particular problem.
Right. So if Hume says it, it's an issue.
That's right.
So the atheist says that we live in a random universe. It's chaos. It's ever changing. Species rise up. They change. They become new creatures and die off. And so this is constantly happening. And so stars are being created. Stars are being destroyed. The basis for all evolution, chemical and macro and micro evolution, is constantly changing everything in the universe. So the atheist has no right to rely on inductive inference. He has no reason to expect causality or the uniformity of nature. Everything is random and changing. He has no basis for believing in the uniformity of nature, but then he has also no basis to do science. And that's what science is. Science is this process to once you find the method, once you plug in the numbers there, you get a law or a rule, and that's what pops out every time. And it goes from, your theorem to your laws, the law of gravity, all these things that we've given millions of dollars to people for discovering these consistencies within the universe. We can say, well, you have no basis for doing them because you have no basis for relying on the uniformity of nature. Biology, astronomy, chemistry, physics, and even history and grammar are kaput. They're all gone. The study of these academic subjects require inductive inference. How do I know that the person speaking German that's taking my English notes is operating in the same mental capacity as me when he's translating from English into German? Well, we just can't take German scientists anymore, so they're out. And so we don't know if hydrogen and oxygen turned to water in Germany. So we're just stuck here.
Yeah, and so he says that the most common way that a person will try to recover from this challenge involving the problem of induction, he'll often say something like this: well, very probably the future will be like the past. So they push, they add probability to the statement. Right. The reason, it very probably will is that it has always done so in the past. So probably the future will be like the past because it's always done so in the past. So there, I've solved the problem of induction. But he says, do you notice the trick that was pulled here, right? So what was the trick? Well, the person who says the future will very probably be like the past has smuggled into the argument the very thing he is supposed to prove, right? When he says that the future will probably be like the past, what is he basing that on? Well, he's basing that on past information, right? In the past, the future has always resembled the past. Well, I think everybody can see this is a circular argument, right? In the past, the future has always resembled the past, so the future will resemble the past. Yeah, right. What you're using is your premise as your conclusion. And of course, that doesn't work, right? It doesn't tell you anything. It's a circular argument. Right. You're begging the question. The question is, why do you think the future will be like the past? And if you say, well, because the future was like the past before, that's not a good answer, right?
Because my memory tells me so. And I know that because I trusted my memory before and it's come through to the end. And yeah, but well, okay, you're still relying on past into future. And so we seem to be at a stopping point here. So all probability arguments rely on the assumption of uniformity. If you don't assume that the future will be like the past, all probabilities based on past are just wasted information. If we live in a random universe, all bets are off. If someone says to you, probably the future will be like the past, you will say, you've begged the question. That's the whole question. How do you know that the future will be like the past? Mm-hmm. Unless there's a uniformity in the world, you can't even make a good probability argument. And I always think of this is very well illustrated by Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because that is a science fiction universe that believes in this. It believes that we don't know induction, and so you have a hyperdrive that turns the one of the spaceships into just random objects, and that's how it generates power to move throughout the universe. And so we don't always know that what the thing is right then and there will be like it was. And so we'll just use that for power. And granted, obviously, this is science fiction, and we're not holding it to the same standards as reality. But at least there, you're understanding. This is what the universe would look like when all of a sudden what pops into existence is the whale and the fern. And the whale thinks about his entire existence until he falls and hits the ground, and the fern goes, "Oh no, not this again."
So they're trying to actually portray reality as if the way material atheists believe reality is, right? Is what that's trying to do. Of course, it ends up being it's funny, right.
Yeah.
And we see how absurd it is as well, right?
Well, and that's the whole point is the main character is realizing how absurd the universe is. He's awakened to this larger world where we missed the deadline to stop this highway from coming in, like how his own home did, and now he's needing to bring a towel because that's what you do. That's the most important thing to do when you go on a space trip. And so it's this absurdity that he's trying to codify in his own mind, but he keeps running into issues. Good old Arthur.
Yeah. And so Bonson asked, then what do we have here, right? He says, well, what we have is two worldviews in conflict. The one worldview, atheism, ridicules you for your supposed Sunday school faith in Jesus, believing in the Bible and all that kind of stuff. But with that simple understanding of the world, the Christian worldview, that God made the world, that he made you, he sent his son to die for your sins, you can do, Bonson tells us, some wonderful and powerful things. He says the whole history of science is based on that assumption that God controls the universe in a regular way and gives us the mental capacity to have ethical dominion over the world, right? Now, notice how powerful that is. It helps us to see that we can be confident that the future, to a certain extent will be like the past, that, God is in control and he's the creator of and in control of his world.
Right. We have to remember too that these scientific revolutions didn't occur because atheism suddenly rose up in the midst of France and the 1500s. It was a product of people who believed in God saying, "I want to know more about how God created the world and how he ordered it. Let me go find out the majesty that God has shown in his creation." And that's always been the case. And it's only till you get to a certain monetarily point, economically, the freedom within one's culture, that you have the freedom to go and expand on these things. I mean, even Newton is trying to understand the order of the universe, and he's trying to categorize it. And he's got certain ideas that were wrong at the time, but are ordered in such a way that he's trying to figure out, okay, in what way did God plan the universe? And am I able to put enough spheres within my model here that they interact with what I'm thinking is the case? And, he comes up along with Leibniz with calculus that were probably found out at the same time. And also they're probably precursors to what Aristotle did. But the arising of these scientific mindset isn't coming from just the ether of humanity. It's coming out of a particular worldview that then is co-opted by others. And so that co-option will come to fruition even more so in this chapter as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so maybe you're thinking, but atheists do science. A lot of atheists. In fact, if you poll all of scientists and say, do you believe in God or do you not believe in God? A majority of them will probably say, no, there's no such thing as a God. And I'm going to go back to my beakers and test tubes and models. And I'm going to, find out the redshift of the universe and prove even more so that God isn't there, because the redshift shows God can't be the creative force in the universe. Well, in fact, many atheists have accomplished more than Christians in science. And so that's what we're talking about here. But it just goes to show that atheists are not very good atheists. Let's harken back to Dr. Mitch Stokes' How to Be an Atheist. He's saying atheists should be better than what they are because they're not being very good atheists when they claim all these certain things. They say one thing with their mouths, but they believe another thing in their hearts. They say there is no God and there's just random universe, but in their hearts, they believe in regularity. Well, why not go random universe? Why are you committing yourself to science? Science is a regular principle. You're trying to establish those laws and rules. And in a random universe where universes pop into existence from nothing, why are we committing ourselves to that? Why are we believing in that?
Yeah.
The problem of inductive inference undermines materialist atheism because it makes science impossible.
And that's his point, right? So that's kind of his first shot here at the atheistic materialists. You have no ground for inductive inferences, right? All you have is a circular argument, and based on that, if we believe if we hold to what you say you believe as an atheistic materialist, then things would just be randomly happening. There's no explanation for why the universe is orderly, why it seems to be uniform in its various laws and that sort of thing. How can you have that in a random materialistic universe, right? So that's just kind of his first shot here. The second one is then the other kind of side to this. It's the problem of deduction. So there's two major kinds of inferences, right? Inductive inferences that allow us to think, and solve problems, and deductive inferences that allows us to come to conclusions and think rationally and solve problems. And so he's looked at the problem of induction. Now he's going to look at the problem of deduction. So he says, let's think about this problem of deduction. Deductive inferences rely on the laws of logic. So when we deduce conclusions, we take the laws of logic and the truths that we know, so the laws of logic and the truths that we know, and we do operations on those truths according to the laws of logic, and we draw other conclusions. And so because the laws of logic are valid, we're able to learn a lot about things that we haven't experienced. So if I know, for instance, he tells us that all men are mortal, and I know that Gary is a man, then I don't have to wait until Gary dies, right? I can tell you now that he's mortal. It follows from the premises. And so that's kind of how the deductive, inferences work.
Right. And can't we see where he's going in a world of complete randomness? Well, to do deductions, you need to be able to identify classes and laws of thought. Or if you want to put it in this way, relationships between the classes and the laws of logic. You can't do deduction without that ability. Without logic, you can't do any academic work or understand anything. Okay, so a big key. So understanding anything, is this something? Yes. Okay, so we need to be able to do this type of deduction. Now you're talking to a materialistic atheist who says that all reality is physical in nature. But if all reality is physical in nature, where is the class or what is the category of humanity? Is that a physical thing? I'm not asking if humans are physical, but he's saying, yes, yes, we are. But is the concept or class known as humanity physical? Well, No, it isn't. And what about the class of mortal things? Is that class physical? He says, well, no, it's not physical.
Right. So we say that all men are mortal, and Gary's a man. So what he's getting at here is the class man, all men, humanity, right? Is that class physical? There are individuals that make up that class, but is the class all men or all humanity, is that physical? And he's trying to make out the point that no, that is not physical. Right? So you can't have that in a materialistic only universe.
This is Plato's type of form thing. So are we able to see a person walking down the street who's missing a leg and go, oh, well, they're still human? Well, where?
Yeah, how do we? Yeah.
Where is that? Is their aura? Is that it? Can we look through some crystals and see an aura of humanity, or as someone has lost their humanity? Oh no, right. I've missed it, and now I'm unable to breathe on a windowsill to put a smiley face on because my humanity has gone out from me.
Right. And then he makes the same kind of, move with the concept or the class of mortal things, right? So we know that humans are mortal in each individual, but what about the class of mortal things, right? And so he makes the same type of thing. And then he gives us another illustration, right? He says when the unbeliever wants to do reasoning, let's say mathematical reasoning, he says, well, we know certain relationships such as 2 + 3 = 5. But he tells us here is a philosophical question. Is this character on the page itself 2, right? Is the character on the page 2? If it is, then we could just erase it and there'd be no more 2 in the universe. We got rid of 2, right? Yeah. It says, of course, that particular character wasn't 2. That was just the numeral 2, which is a representation or an instantiation, right? An instance of the concept 2. The concept of 2 is not physical, and that's what his point is here. Yeah. So we have to understand and assume, or at least realize, if we're going, when we're doing math, that we're dealing with concepts that are non-physical. Well, again, the question for the atheistic materialist is how can you have that in a materialistic world, right?
Right.
So how can you have numbers, right?
I like what he says here on page 155. He says, can you go to the refrigerator and say, I'm going to pull 2 out of the refrigerator tonight? 2 what? Never mind that. Not 2 of anything, just 2. So.
Yeah. Is it cold? Yeah, will it break if you strike it on the counter? Right?
Sounds like something you do in like Sesame Street. Oh, I'm going to go pull 2 out of the refrigerator. So here you have the unbeliever who's talking about immaterial, non-physical set of things known as human beings and immaterial, non-physical set of things known as mortals and immaterial, non-physical two-ness. And yet he's using the laws of logic, which are not physical, but conceptual. The last step that you say to the atheists is, since for everything that exists must be material or physical, then for you, there can be no laws of logic or classes or concepts. There can be no numbers. There can be no concepts of humanity. There can be no classes of mortal beings. There can be no laws of logic. There can be no classes and no laws of logic. There can be no deduction. And so if you've ever listened to Bonson debate Gordon Stein in kind of the debate he's well known for, this is something in their cross-section debate that he really harps on. And so if you want to go and listen to that, I'll remember to put a link here in the show notes to link that classic debate. And so this idea of okay, well, if everything in the universe is physical, then when I say 2 of things, you're just talking about an utteration from your mouth, but you don't actually mean 2 in the sense that mathematicians think of 2. And so there seems to be an issue with that. And what about the laws of logic? Are those things just mere words, or is that part of reality? Can something exist and not exist at the same time? Well, that seems to be an issue with everything just being reality, and that's all there is, and there's no further discussion needed.
Right. And so the point he's trying to make is, notice he's taken two things away from the materialistic atheists. He's taken inductive inferences now and then deductive inferences. And again, his point, as he made at the beginning, is the Christian worldview is the transcendental precondition of intelligibility, right? Precondition, what must be the case, right? What must be assumed for someone to know anything, right? For their experiences to be intelligible. And if we take away induction and deduction, then the atheist can't have any intelligible understanding of the universe, right? Because they're assuming that there's only physical things that exist. And of course, these things are based on non-physical reality.
So we've taken away science. We've taken away the laws of logic. Good thing that's all that we're able to take away from atheists. So as long as we can focus on those things and nothing else, then we can defeat atheism. Well, okay, actually, we're going to stop halfway here because there's actually two more areas of all of reality that we want to focus on that the materialistic atheist does not have the ability to account for in their worldview. And so we're going to cover those next time when we complete chapter 8 of A Critique of Atheism. And so hopefully you'll join us back next time, and we'll figure out what else is there an issue if all that there is all that you see. There are maybe other things that you don't see that you just kind of take for granted. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.